Hey everybody, welcome. We're live. Excited to have you here. I can do better than that. We're live. So it is power session time. Everybody should be getting their alerts that we are online, giving everybody a chance to log in. We're going to be talking about some really good stuff today. I think anyway. Just a couple things that I think can serve some of you that might be in kind of a tough place. So there might be some of you watching or on here that think this was specifically for you. I hope you feel that way. But to be honest, total confession, today's topic is exactly what I needed. We'll get into that in just a minute. So, but anyway, good to see you guys. Good to see you girls. Good to see everybody. Thanks for jumping on here, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else. So we'll get into this in just a minute. But those of you who join us for the first time or watching this as a recording, these are power sessions. We do these live every Tuesday where we get an opportunity to dive into some principles and practices and processes that allow us to be able to improve our lives that much more. It's interesting to me how much of the game of success is a marginal game in terms of it's about the margins that we can create. And one of the reasons why almost 20 years ago as a company, the Habit Finder decided that we weren't just going to teach principles, we were going to figure out what was going on under the surface. Why was it that the brain was so built to be able to conceptualize and see ourselves doing things more consistently, more successfully, and yet when we go to implement, we run into expectation and frustration and feel like we were trapped. And so we wanted to be able to measure that, which we did. We created an assessment called the Habit Finder that deploys axiological mathematics, Cantor's transfinite calculus, and the concept of infinitudes to be able to measure your thinking. We wanted to know how you were thinking. Now, that doesn't tell us what you're thinking, so no need to get too worried about disclosure in taking the Habit Finder. But in studying in probably well over 150,000 entrepreneurs and business leaders that have taken this assessment, that we've had an opportunity to deep dive with, to coach with, to speak for, to be able to make an impact on, we've discovered that as far upstream as you can get to creating your success is in the way that you think. Now, many of us have heard this and we understand this, but it's time to actually put it into action. It's time to understand the way your mind works and how that's impacting you. It's time to understand what we think is the way to create success that actually works against us. What are some of the greatest strengths that we have that actually create some of our greatest challenges? So today, for those of you who's joining us for the first time, I speak frequently about optimism. I'm not a huge fan of optimism only because the way that I see it consistently used by business leaders and entrepreneurs especially, and that is that optimism can be a wonderful thing. I'm a huge fan of optimism being used productively, optimism being used to impact the quality of your energy. Where we get into challenges is that optimism can turn into lidocaine. It can turn into an anesthetic, something that numbs us to what's really going on inside. Okay. Now, what I want to talk about today is what happens when life sucks. Okay. And obviously, it's important to talk about optimism right up front, because if you adhere to the numbing, distracting effects that optimism can create, you're going to have a hard time believing, or actually not believing, you're going to have a hard time accepting that life's going to suck sometimes, that it's not going to line up the way that you want it to. I don't want this to be a negative conversation. I want this to be an illuminating conversation, because there's a couple of things I'm going to give you today in your survival for a crappy day that could change everything for you. Because there are times that life sucks. There are times that people let you down. There are times that you feel bad. There are times that depression and anxiety and overwhelm can get the best of you. There are times that you just don't plain feel like it. And I don't mean like, I don't feel like it, but I'm still going to get it done anyway. I mean, don't feel like it and you're not quite sure how you're going to peel yourself out of bed or off the couch or out of your chair or away from YouTube or Netflix or whatever, like that kind of constricting feeling that is created. And to do that, I want to make sure we understand the two things that are involved here. Okay. We've got, this is going to be my really crappy drawing of a brain that we're going to call your cerebral engine. Okay. And then we've got the second factor, which is your physical body. These are the two factors involved in your life, in your success. Your cerebral engine, which is your brain, your thoughts, how your conscious and unconscious mind is flowing together, how it's supporting or sabotaging it. This is powerful. There's a reason this is a lot bigger than this in ratio, because the brain is incredibly powerful. I love Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, We Are the Placebo. The placebo factor is not like some charade. It's not like some parlor trick. It is proof of how powerful the mind is. Whereas someone could take, for example, ibuprofen, be like, oh, that doesn't do anything for me. Well, chemically, it's impossible for it to not do anything. You don't have ibuprofen immunity, okay? Maybe there are super, super rare cases, but what you're actually saying is, I don't feel like it does anything to me. And because that feeling is driven by your cerebral engine, there are things about your senses and your body's even receptivity to that gets impacted positively or negatively based on this cerebral engine, okay? And then we've got our physical body, which is the reality of chemicals, nerves, systems, organs that are being driven by this cerebral engine, okay? This is the engine for our lives. This is the actual vehicle, the framework, the body, the actual vehicle that's traveling through our lives, okay? So exactly, thank you. Crappy drawing for a crappy day. Okay, so we've got this cerebral engine. Now, most of us, when we get into personal development, are trying to figure out, and it's actually a really popular term that I've heard, and I have even used, and that is we are trying to hack this so that it can better control that. So personal development, oftentimes, when you really break down people's expectations and what they're trying to create, are trying to hack their brain to be able to overcome their body and its feelings and its chemicals and its challenges and its limitations to hopefully reach some point of success, to reach some destination where these will suddenly align and we'll just feel so much better and we'll finally have that freedom and we'll finally be able to do the things we really want to do and be able to tell the world to go screw itself. And really, you'd be amazed at how many of us that love people, want to change lives, there are thoughts like that. They're just thoughts, but there are thoughts like that. So what we're going to do today is check in with what's really going on when we have a crappy day and the best way to be able to shift that. Now, the number one cause of crappy days, the number one cause of burnout, the number one cause of challenges, you could name them all different ways in terms of how we experience them, is when this drove this crazy, okay? When this drove way beyond what this could handle, okay? When this got polluted and ended up polluting this. The cerebral engine starts to pour into the body because we were trying to use this to distract from the reality of what was really going on with our body. We tried to use this to hack what was going on. Well, in personal development, the way that we teach it, the way that you want to bring it into your life, is not to hack your cerebral engine, to be able to hack your physical body. It is to be able to align these two things so that they can serve each other. Alignment is where happiness is found. Alignment is where clarity is created. Alignment is where fulfillment is created and peace is created. And all the things that we experience in a crappy day is the opposite of alignment. It's really that simple and that difficult, okay? Really that simple and really that difficult. That personal development is about building the principles, the awareness that as we make this stronger, that we're frequently becoming clearer about this. When you put in a huge engine into a sports car, you also install all kinds of devices to see how it's affecting this, how it's affecting the axle, how it's affecting the exhaust, how it's affecting the heat, how it's affecting all these different things that are impacting the rest of the car and its performance. You don't just put a big engine in and just go. That's how you break things and crash and get out of control. And it's not all that dissimilar from what happens to us as human beings, okay? So, and great question, Jill. I'm going to come to that in just a second. So I just want to make sure this is really understood on a simple level. You've got your cerebral engine, you've got your body, and we're looking to create alignment between these two. Alignment to what? Alignment to true principles. So now we understand we're going to need to have an awareness of our cerebral engine. We're going to need to have an awareness of our physical body. And we're going to need to have access to true principles to be able to accomplish success in our personal development. Well, I can't give you awareness. That's something that you have to be open to. That's something you have to be willing to experience. I can't give you awareness in either of these areas. That's a decision that you make. That's a surrender oftentimes. And I've worked with a lot of my clients to let them know that what they want to create is often about letting it happen as much as it is making it happen. In fact, most entrepreneurs are trying to make too many things happen rather than letting things happen and bringing the alignment and the energy and the passion and the drive and the inspiration that comes from that space. Okay? So this is your basic equation. You're looking to take your cerebral engine, align your physical body, and apply them to true principles. Now, you are human. That's the X factor here, okay? The X factor, and it's a beautiful one, is that you are human, meaning you are imperfect, meaning you have weaknesses, you have challenges, meaning eventually someday you're going to die, okay? I mean, we could get really morbid about it, but I'm not trying to go there today. But the fact is that this is a human experience. That's what we're having. We're having a human experience, and your physical body is human. It has limitations. Now, we are never going to settle for those limitations. Settling, in terms of this side of the equation or this side, never served anyone. What we want to do, what is far more productive, is to embrace. We want to embrace our humanity. Allow it to be a part of the equation. It will increase your awareness and your sensitivity, your appropriately, clearly applied sensitivity to your cerebral engine and to your physical body. Because when you don't apply that embrace, when you don't apply your awareness of your own humanity, the likelihood that your alignment will get way out of alignment goes up exponentially. And we're talking about like into a twisted mess when you used to try and program the VCR back in the day with a remote control. Like an absolute twisted mess out of alignment when we don't embrace our humanity in this process. And that's a big part of what you're asking about, Jill. What if you only find yourself in alignment for brief moments? How do you stay there? Well, the first key is now you've acknowledged that you've been able to get here before. Okay? Once you've been able to acknowledge that you can get here before, you celebrate it. If our instinct of becoming aware that we couldn't stay in alignment was to celebrate that we were in alignment versus kick the crap out of ourselves for not being able to stay there, we start shifting the margins in our life. And I've shared this with many people. One of my favorite quotes from a spiritual mentor of mine who said that small hinges swing big gates. Okay, small hinges swing big gates. And this is a small hinge. Embracing your humanity and celebrating the alignment you are able to achieve. If you make just one simple shift from today's conversation, and that is when you feel yourself falling out of alignment, you go, oh, that was so cool. I was in alignment. Wasn't able to sustain it, but I know how to get back there. I know how to get back there. It's not going to be easy, and what I'm going to give you today are 4 pieces, 5 in fact, a 4 and a bonus, we'll call it, for being able to handle when you get knocked out of alignment so far that it results in having a crappy day, okay? Now, what we're doing is we're embracing and celebrating because it's not about staying there. It's about getting there more often first, okay? So Jill, that's the first piece, is it's not about staying there, it's about getting there more often. And once we can get there more often, then we're building the habit of being able to get there, which then means we can elevate to the next level, and that's figure out how to stay there a little longer. We are messing with our very high levels of expectations, our all or nothing brain. Why I'm deliberately saying stay there a little longer. Because you could try and force yourself to stay there longer, but you may be staying there longer with your cerebral engine, but your body's slipping out. So you trying to convince yourself that you're still there, but you're really not. I see people do this all the time with fatigue and exhaustion and burnout, where their body is tired, but their cerebral engine's pumped. It's fired up. But remember, we need both for alignment. And if we're not embracing that, if we're not understanding and checking in with our body while our cerebral engine is performing at a really high level, we're going to alienate the vehicle. And eventually the vehicle will force itself upon the engine. Doesn't matter how great the engine is, if the vehicle breaks down, the engine is not going to go anywhere. It doesn't have its own wheels, okay? It doesn't have its own capacity to carry passengers. But getting an opportunity to be able to check in on this alignment is critical. And that's why first we want to embrace our humanity, celebrate the time that we were in alignment, and then focus on getting there more often. And Jill and everyone else, once you've gotten better at getting there more often, then you can start to focus on the capacity and the habits of staying there a little longer. Most crappy days, most difficult experiences, most self-sabotage comes from it not being okay for you to be human. There are things that happen and frailties and weaknesses that we have, sure, but just like small hinges swing big gates positively, small hinges swing big gates negatively too. And so when we fall out of alignment, or we're not showing up the way that we wish we could, or as consistently as we thought we could, we're doing far more damage from beating ourselves up in doing that than in what we're actually experiencing. Because we're actually experiencing a trip up, a little fall, a challenge, a difficult time. But it's what we're doing out of alignment. Now this cerebral engine's beating the crap out of the body for not being in alignment anymore, or vice versa. And what we're doing is we're perpetuating, we're magnifying the challenge. So in terms of the next time something happens, okay, that just knocks you off your game, okay, then everything from just something that happens that knocks you off your game to having a crappy day, getting to an entire day, an entire 24 hours. That's a big deal. I know some of you have had crappy days turn into crappy weeks and even turn into crappy months, but I want to focus on a crappy day, because if we can break it down to a day, we can get it into a manageable place and make a huge impact on the days to come. And that's really one of the primary goals we want to make. When I ran sales teams, I'd let them know all the time, do you know how you avoid having a crappy year? Make sure you never have a crappy month. Do you know how you avoid having a crappy month? Make sure you never have a crappy week. Do you know how you avoid having a crappy week? Will you avoid making sure you never have a crappy day? And how do you avoid having a crappy day? Make sure you never have a crappy night. How do you make sure you don't have a crappy night? Don't have a crappy morning. How do you make sure you don't have a crappy morning? Well, I'm going to give you some pieces for that, okay? Now, some of you may not realize you're having a crappy day till later in the day, so don't start beating yourself up for, oh, I didn't do these things in the morning. These things can be done at any time of day. This is your triage kit, okay? This is your opportunity to pull out, okay? Somebody said, like, what was the AAA comment? Oh, you're like AAA. Okay, yeah, this is your roadside assistance for a crappy day, okay? Again, reiterating, there is crappy things that happen to us, but then there are the ways we make ourselves feel about those crappy things that make it so much worse, okay? And I'm going to talk about that in the bonus item for your roadside assistance kit for a crappy day, okay? All right, let's get into the simplicity. Let's get into just the really simple things, okay? Because there's nothing worse than crappy day and complexity and confusion. That's just a really, bad word cocktail. Okay. Anyway, all right. So, crappy day survival guide. Number 1, write. This is such an underutilized tool and powerful, cathartic tool to use to be able to relieve some of the pressure that makes all the difference. There's pressure on your brain right now, but you turn it up just enough and you could go brain dead. It doesn't take a lot more pressure than you already have to be able to create major challenges in your neurology and in your brain. Okay? So we want to understand that pressure, although we'd love to escape from it all, like we'd love to escape from gravity, it's just not going to happen. But if we can marginalize it, if we can bring it down just a little bit, just like your brain if it swells from injury, okay, then it can make all the difference. It can make all the difference. It doesn't feel like it when you're having a crappy day, that if you could just shift a little bit, that everything would be so much better, because that pisses off part of your mind that's like, there's no way it could be that easy, because then that doesn't justify how brooding and bad I feel right now, because I need to feel crappy. That's one of the things that's difficult, is when we're having a crappy day, there's some part of us, remember the misalignment, it's usually our body jumping in and saying, hey, I need to feel crappy today because you've been ignoring me. And this is my chance to jump in. I'm going to throw in some chemicals. I'm going to throw in some fatigue that you can't compete with no matter how much caffeine you use. I'm going to throw in some stress that you can't compete with no matter how much Adderall or weed you smoke or whatever you use. Okay, we're all looking for tons of different things. No judgment. We all use different versions of all kinds of different things to be able to deal with our cerebral engine being out of alignment with our body and creating a crappy day. Well, writing is such an amazing way to be able to open up communication channels between your body and your cerebral engine. So what do you write? Well, first of all, write anything. Write anything. Open up your iPad where you take notes, or a notebook or a journal, and just start writing. In fact, one of the greatest places to start would be just acknowledging what is. I'm having a crappy day. And then ask yourself a question, okay? One of the greatest things to do in the process of your writing is to ask questions. Ask yourself questions, okay? Now, you could ask, why am I having a crappy day? I like the next level of that. Why did I need to have a crappy day? Like, for example, let's keep this just really simple. I'll give you the question. Why did I need to have a crappy day? Because trust me, your body is not doing this just, for giggles, okay? It's not doing this for its own entertainment. It's doing this because it needs to. You're having a crappy day, or you're depressed, or you're overwhelmed, or you're anxious, or you're stressed to a point that you don't feel like you can function for a reason, because there's something about you that needs it, okay? So why did I need to have a crappy day? Guess what's so beautiful about that question? If you're willing to answer it openly and honestly and explore that, and you may not even know what you're going to write until you start writing it down to the answer to that question, you're now delivering yourself the checklist of what you're going to want to focus on today to be able to make sure that a crappy day doesn't turn into a crappy couple days, and that a crappy couple days doesn't turn into a crappy week, okay? Because remember, the number one reason that a crappy day turns into a crappy week and a crappy week turns into a crappy month is because we're beating ourselves up and not making it okay to be human. We're so zeroed in on not still being in alignment rather than celebrating the fact that we were, and driving energy into figuring out how to get back there, no matter what it takes, and being able to make it okay along the way, okay? So ask questions. Why did I need to have a crappy day? You answer that, you just gave yourself the formula for how to make sure tomorrow isn't crappy, or at least this week isn't crappy. Or maybe even if you can get to the bottom of this, can't tell you how many times I've done this and made sure that my crappy morning didn't turn into a crappy day, or my crappy hour didn't turn into a crappy day, okay? Being able to understand this is huge. And whatever the answers are, allow them to be okay. Allow them to be human. And again, this is where optimism comes into play, because optimism will not allow you to answer this question honestly. Optimism may even make it difficult for you to realize you're having a crappy day until it's too late, until it's turned into a crappy week. And you just can't optimism your way to getting through the day. Okay? It will wear on you. It will catch up. It will beat you. Your cerebral engine, just like the engine of a car on its own, cannot go anywhere. It can rev hard. It can make a lot of noise. It can look impressive, sound impressive, but it can't go anywhere. So we want to find this alignment, okay? We want this to be okay, to allow ourselves to be human. And the first thing to do is to write. Okay? If you're feeling crappy, write. Start writing. And tell optimism to bud out. Okay? You don't need it right now. Right now, you need to be real. Right now, you want to illuminate what's going on. Not so that you can wallow in it, not so that you can try on victim outfits, because very few people look good in victim, okay? Nobody looks good in victim, actually, okay? So write. Start writing. It can be simple. It can just be words, like random words. The expectations of, because falls in alignment with journaling, and the expectations of journaling is the number one reason why most people that don't journal don't, is because they have unrealistic expectations, okay, and beat themselves up for them when their reality runs into these expectations, and when they've run into them long enough, you end up having a crappy day, okay? So number one is write. Number two is walk. Number two is walk. If you're having a crappy day, go for a walk. There are a few things as powerful as changing your scenery, or as the simple physical cerebral action that you're talking about, creating alignment between your cerebral engine and your body. Walking is one of the most powerful ways to do that. Okay? Now, if you have tried walking with music and it didn't quite do it for you, or you tried walking the dog and it didn't quite do it for you, I want you to try experimenting with just you and you. Just you and listening to things that you didn't listen to before, hearing things that you didn't hear before, internally and externally, and just walk. You don't set the expectations that this is going to fix everything, okay? It's not about fixing a crappy day. It's about allowing it to be okay, embracing your humanity, and celebrating the fact that you're becoming aware of it. And that alone, for most crappy days, is going to do extraordinary things in turning stuff around. But fortunately for you, there are two more things and a bonus thing, just in case that's not enough, okay? So you've written, you've asked yourself questions and answered them on paper. You've gone for a walk, and you still feel crappy, okay? Well, then what we're going to do is we're going to connect. We're going to find someone to care about. That's all, okay? Let me get rid of the glare here. We're going to find someone to care about, to connect with. Okay? I know it's the last thing you feel like doing when you're having a crappy day. But that's because your body needs it, and now it's released chemicals to force it, to make it happen. But what we're going to do is we're going to go along for the ride, and it's going to be okay. But we're going to preserve later today. We're going to preserve tomorrow, rather than allow ourselves to perpetuate and magnify and make those feelings, those chemicals, and the crappiness that we're experiencing even worse. And we're going to do that by writing, walking, and then connecting. We're going to find one person to connect with, one person to care about, someone that you really care about that you haven't talked to in a while, a family member, a friend, someone you used to be really close with in school. An agenda-free, no objective, just call and connect and care about somebody else. You know, and you're just going to sit back and go, who could I care about right now? Who could I connect with? And keep it super simple. Even if the conversation is a couple of minutes, okay? Even if it seems to go around in circles, just to reach out to someone and say, I'm thinking about you. I just realized we haven't talked in a long time. How are you? You know, and getting the opportunity to step into their world, to connect, is a huge way to turn around a bad day. And the only objective was just to get to talk. It was just to care. So you win no matter who you call and no matter what you talk about, because you talked, and that was the goal. It was to care more about them than to focus on your crappy day. Because you can care about your crappy day and make it worse, or you can care about somebody else and make your crappy day way better. So that's number 3, connect. And these go in a progression. Don't jump right to connecting when you're having a crappy day. It won't go well, okay? More times than not, it won't go well. Write, walk, connect. And then number 4, feel. So much of a crappy day is experienced because we don't want to feel it. We don't want to feel what our body needs us to pay attention to. And so what do? We fill it with more distractions. Trying to avoid feeling what is, we end up doing things that don't support the way we'd ultimately like to feel, which then makes it even worse. How many of you have ever had a crappy day and talked yourself into doing things because it was okay because you were having a crappy day, and it was okay for you just to do things that you wouldn't normally do because it's a crappy day, and at least letting loose makes you feel better? No, letting loose distracts you for a moment while the crappiness gets worse because now you're not paying attention to it, but you're distracting yourself. But eventually you still have to come back to your body, okay? You still have to come back to the way it's actually feeling. And now, because it's been ignored even for a little bit longer, for another hour, for another 2 hours, you ate something crappy that you would normally eat, okay? Well, where in the book did it say having a crappy day and eating something crappy would make it feel better? I did this just the other day. I can tell you it doesn't work. Had a crappy day, so I ate crappy, and guess how I felt the next morning? Crappy. Imagine that. So what we want to do is give ourselves permission to feel, because if we don't give ourselves permission to actually feel what we're feeling, to actually experience it, and if you're worried about getting lost in this, set your timer for 7 minutes and just slouch down in your chair and just allow it to pour all over you. Let it just distort your face. Like, let it just totally take over you. And then when that alarm goes off, stand up, do 4 or 5 jumping jacks and be like, all right, I'm going to write, I'm going to walk, I'm going to connect. Okay? Because I'm giving myself permission to feel. Okay? And what's beautiful is what you wrote is going to give a lot of clarity, a lot of speed to getting to the feel part. Going for the walk is going to open your mind to connecting and feeling. I mean, see how these serve each other? So give yourself permission to feel, because getting busier is not on your survival guide for getting through a crappy day. Busyness is like pouring water on a grease fire. It's going to make it worse. It's like drinking water after eating something super atomically spicy, okay? So don't get busier if you're having a crappy day. Get simpler and start here. Now, we want to be careful, okay, that we don't go into total inactivity, because that doesn't allow us to preserve the next day or to preserve later that day. However, intentional pockets of inactivity can be wonderful benefits to a crappy day. Especially if you keep feeling pressure to be busy, pressure to get certain things done. Okay, when you're feeling pressure on a crappy day, that's a really dangerous combination, because that pressure is more likely to break you that day and have you end up making decisions that will have you feeling crappy the next day, even though now the chemicals have gone through, but now you feel crappy in your digestive system, or you feel crappy with a headache or other things. And then eventually you get frustrated about that, and so you invite the chemicals back into the day, make it even worse, and you go through this perpetual cycle of crappiness. What I want you to understand are really simple guides to be able to make sure that a crappy day doesn't turn into a crappy week, so it doesn't turn into a crappy month, so it doesn't turn into a crappy year. And these are one of the 4 best things that I can offer. For you to write something down, to write down what's really going on, for you to go on a walk, even for a few minutes, to be able to connect. And some people say, well, I couldn't go on a walk today because it was bad weather. What a beautiful opportunity for you to go walk and experience the weather. Even if it's cold and frigid, just experience it. Actually do it on purpose. It's raining right now. I'm going to be going for a walk after this call, okay? And I'm going to come back and I'm going to have raindrops all over my shirt, okay? And I'm going to need to explain to the next person I'm meeting with that it wasn't from sweat or something weird, okay? I'm going to go experience it, okay? Because I want to go for a walk. I want to experience my body. I want to experience the alignment with something as simple as right foot, left arm, right arm, left foot, right arm, left arm. I want to experience that consciously and intentionally as a cue to my cerebral engine and my body that we are choosing to get back into alignment. Understanding it might take a couple hours, it might take all day for the chemicals to work through, for the challenges that I've got, for what the noise and mess I've got on here. But I know that if I don't write, if I don't walk, if I don't connect, and I don't give myself permission to feel what I'm actually feeling in intentional and conscious moments of time, rather than just trying to keep brushing it under the rug, that this crappy day could very well turn into a crappy tomorrow. And that's a really frustrating, difficult place to live. Okay, bonus. Write, walk, connect, feel. Bonus is permission. Bonus item is permission. Give yourself permission to have a crappy day. Give yourself permission to be human. Give yourself permission to feel frustrated. Give yourself permission to feel depressed. Give yourself permission to feel overwhelmed. It's amazing to me, even with the 4 things I just went through, how much worse we make our lives because we're not willing to give ourselves permission to do those things, to feel those things. They're all a cue. They're all some message that the misalignment of our cerebral engine, our body, are trying to pass along to us. And our natural reaction is to distract or to get busier, which is just a different form of distraction. And the distractions are never productive, nor do they ever actually serve the problem. They just give us a timeout, and then we come back and it's grown even more. It's gotten even worse, like bacteria, okay? So give yourself permission. And here's the most beautiful part of giving yourself permission to have a crappy day. And this is something that my personal coach, my mindset coach that I've been with for over a decade taught me. And that is that if you give yourself permission to have a crappy day, you can actually plan them. You can actually plan your bad day. You can actually plan your bad morning. You can actually plan because you are so in tune with where you're at. And it's amazing to me how when I would just drive this cerebral engine and then eventually my body would make me pay attention, how much longer it takes to get through that process than it does to say, you know what, I'm starting to feel this. So Friday afternoon, I'm going to take 3 hours and I'm just going to binge on YouTube videos and doing nothing and just laying around, no contact with anyone. And I'm going to do that on purpose. And I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm going to enjoy feeling crappy because I'm going to do it on purpose. And so I do that. And it's amazing to me. And this is kind of an art and a science. You need to find what works for you. Because if going and doing that for 3 hours makes me feel worse, then I know that A, I didn't do it intentionally, okay? Or B, I read the wrong signals about where I was really at and what was in my way. Because giving yourself permission to have a crappy day doesn't mean you go try and anticipate them and create them. You don't go create crappy days. It means you become more sensitive and more attuned to listening to that for that alignment. Checking in with your body as much as you continue to check in with the cerebral engine in your personal development. Okay? Any questions? Yes. And Norma asked a great question. You're talking mentally crappy day, right? Not physically, as in sick. There actually isn't much of a difference for a lot of people. The reason why I mentioned the placebo factor is because a lot of times when you get physically sick, a lot of times, and it's not across the board. I understand how viruses and bacteria and different things actually work within the body, okay? But a lot of times, getting physically sick, your body may grab there's viruses, there's sickness around us all the time, 24/7. None of us live in a completely sterile environment. So why is it that this one impacted us that way versus these thousands and millions of strains of bacteria and viruses didn't? Well, what if, and I'm just saying what if for you to explore. I'm not saying this is gospel or science, but what if, okay, it happens to be something that I believe, what if your body was looking for an out, some way to get your attention? And so a virus came along and it went, this is a way that I can get her attention. And you get sick beyond the point that you can't do anything. Well, first of all, same rules apply, okay? writing down, walking, connecting, and feeling, okay? Within reason, depending on how sick you got. Depending on if you got severely sick, then feeling is going to be the most important thing. Allow yourself to feel what your body's been trying to tell you and give yourself permission. Those are the two most important things when you're physically sick, when you're having a physically crappy day, because more than likely it was perpetuated or even created by mental crappiness, okay? But your body found something it could grab a hold of to use to, hey, now you're going to pay attention to me. And not giving yourself permission to be sick, not allowing yourself to actually feel what you're going through, puts you in the worst position to try and get through it quickly, to be able to get through it efficiently. Because many of us just get pissed that we're sick and make being sick even worse. But that's the same problem that created the mental crappiness in the first place, okay? Put it on the crapender. Yes, catharsis and self-care, absolutely. On the calendar. A bunch of like-minded, punny people on here, just like me. My physical and mental crappy days were always on the same days. This is great info. Listen to what your body is trying to tell you, then do something about it. Be open to it, explore it. Just see what you might be able to discover proactively about where you're at, to be able to catch patterns. Because most of what we're experiencing in a crappy day happened well before today. Now, there might be things that happened the night before or that morning, like I was on with a group of clients the other day, and one of the clients had planned to go to the gym and to whatever, and then suddenly she got up in the morning, her car wasn't working, so she spent 4 hours at the dealership trying to get it done. She could have let that turn into a crappy day, but if that could make it a crappy day, just that little occurrence, because in the river of centuries, as Mandino would call it, that's really not a whole big thing. But if that turned it into a crappy day, then more than likely the seeds that were planted for that crappy day were planted well before she got up that morning to have to take her car in. So let's be more proactive and more open to these things and be curious. That's really what we're doing here, is we're being curious about the alignment of our cerebral engine and our body, okay? After you ask the question, why did I need to have a crappy day? What do you do with the answer? Well, get it out. Get it out. Because it's swirling around in 80,000 other thoughts consciously and a few million unconscious thoughts. And it's swirling around, and get it out. Write it down. What do you do with it? Think about it. You'll know what to do with it once you actually get open and real about it. It's going to come after you write it down and you ponder it. And then ask yourself productive questions like, what could I do with this? How do I want to feel? What would it feel like if? What may have I not been paying closer attention to that got me here? Whatever. And we're doing this all with a spirit of curiosity, not with indictment, not with judgment, because that's not how we feel, and that's not how we give permission. Okay, you're very welcome for this crappy life. Okay. All right, thanks everybody. It's just a reality. It's the ebb and flow of life. And so what we're not going to do is we're not going to pretend we're not having a crappy day. We're also not going to broadcast to everyone out there that we're having a crappy day, okay? But we're going to give ourselves a chance to write some things down, to go for a walk, and then to connect, and to give ourselves permission to feel, to be able to do those things. And that doesn't mean that you're instantly that minute going to feel better. That's not how the body works. It takes time to bleed off the cortisol and the adrenaline and the other stress hormones and challenges that it gets created by getting knocked off tilt in a crappy day. But we're going to know that we're preserving later today, or we're preserving tomorrow, the better and better we can get at this. And it's not always going to be perfect, and we'll still get sick. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you were planting seeds for crappy days. Sometimes you just get sick. But still, let's explore the margins. Because what if 2 times out of 10 you got sick because you were going to get sick anyway, but then 8 times out of 10 it was because of stuff like this. It was mental crappy that led to physical crappy. And let's check in. Let's be curious. And let's give ourselves an opportunity to shift. Okay? And shifting doesn't always happen as quickly as pushing in the clutch, pulling it out of gear, pushing in the next gear, and then smoothly drawing the clutch and the gas properly. Okay? It takes time. And patience should probably be the theme of a lot of this, because impatience leads to not giving ourselves permission. Impatience leads to distractions. Impatience leads to getting busier and busier and busier and disregarding ourselves more and more and more. Okay? Pay attention to whether you're going into quicksand. That's not what any of this should be. If you feel like you're being drawn into quicksand, then go do something. Okay? Skip the writing and just go for a walk. Okay? Skip the feeling and other things and just go sit down with someone and talk with them about their day. Go take on a part of what you would like to get done today, or what you believe would have you feeling better tomorrow if you were able to get it done. Some simple thing. Okay? If you feel that any of these things I'm sharing with you today are just drawing you into quicksand, okay, making things worse or making you feel more distant, then go do something. Get up, get out of your office, get out of your house, go do something, and then come back to the list. Because sometimes we have deeply worn patterns that even good advice can lead us the wrong direction, depending on what we're experiencing. So hopefully that's helpful. And thanks for being here today. I'm going to jump off, and everybody have a great day. We'll see you next week.